Hey guys, it's Spoot from Fort Misery Gaming, and bringing to you to the channel, we're going to start covering Sinoalice. I specifically am going to be covering Sinoalice, the SquareSoft Square Enix. You boys don't know what SquareSoft is; you're too young. Uh, the SquareSoft game Sinoalice, which has been out in Japan since 2017, had a bit of a tumultuous release and is now releasing worldwide on July 1st. With me, I am bringing one of the OGs of the Sinoalice community, among others, our new friend Xant.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, so as Sputicus said, I played Sinoalice back when the game originally released in JP, and I did play it for a decent amount of time, so hopefully I can help you guys all get on your feet picking up this game.
He's also being a little modest. He is the one of the main admins for the Discord, and multiple YouTubers have actually sought this man's advice. So, like, don't down yourself. Like, you actually have a bit of a reputation that I can respect. So,
Is this clout? Can I put it on my resume?
you don't, man.
Uh,
If somebody talks real nice to me on Twitter, I put it on my resume. Had a good Twitter interaction. 9/12. So, I wish it weren't so. God, I wish it weren't so. We're already so far out. Oh, what a terrible time to be alive. So Sinoalice is a role playing gotcha. Who was the original developer? Because I'm sure I could find it, but I don't remember it off the top of my
the
head.
original developer is Pokelabo. I think that's how you pronounce it.
Yeah,
And then it was published by Square, like you said.
yeah. Okay, so Pokelabo, and what was the issue on release? Because I know there was a little bit of a
It mostly
weirdness.
just it was mostly just boiled down to when the game released, they didn't have the appropriate server space. I guess the best way to put it, that game was on fire for like the
Oh
first
yeah,
2 weeks. You could barely connect. When you did connect, it was super like you were barely going to be able to stay online most of the time. But they were very transparent with their communication. They kept telling us like, we understand, we're going to fix it. There's going to be, lots of apology for this. Like, just don't worry, guys, just deal with it. And we did. It took them a while to get back on their feet, but then we got a whole bunch of stuff for free because of it, so they made up for it.
yeah. I mean, people like free stuff. And then I had heard that Nexon had a hand in it originally, but I could just be reading maybe original dev notes and not necessarily like things that came about.
That's that's the North American version, the global release of the game. It was Pokelabo, and then it was going to be published by Nexon. And
And
that was
Nexon
last
has a
year.
little bit of a bitter taste, and people that are in the industry have a very love hate relationship with Nexon. So
Yeah, it's understandable, but yeah, they were supposed to release it last year, and literally 3 days. I think it was 3 days. Might have been even less than 3 days. I
I
think
was
it
gonna
was like
say it was
maybe
close because it was supposed to be, was it August or September?
it was within 72 hours of the game releasing. They said we are indefinitely delaying this game. We apologize, and they went radio silent. And then earlier this year, I think it was February-ish,
I want to say it was about
Pokelabo
February.
yeah, Pokelabo just kind of kicked the door down and said, "Hey guys, we're self-publishing and global, coming out in a few months. Have fun." And everyone just started celebrating because we finally heard a peep out of this game.
Yeah, and communication is kind of key because a lot of devs don't they're not good at road mapping. Like people may or may not remember like Pokemon Masters. Like when they first came out, the game was the best game ever for 48 hours and then it died. And then it was just radio silent for I don't know, like 4 or 5 months and then they were like, "Hey guys, we haven't talked in a while. Please sit down and listen to us." And they started releasing these roadmaps to things that they wanted to accomplish in the game and things they wanted to deliver on. And that kind of communication is very hard to get in the mobile world. It's an expectation in some circles on PC, but mobile games very rarely get that treatment. So, just to go on, so the director of this game is Yoko Taro from Nier, Drakengard. The man's been in the Square sphere for a very, very long time prior to that, but he's mostly been creative director and director for Nier Drakengard and a couple of other side projects, but these are his primary things. There is a crossover with Nier. I think it's pretty much on release for global.
Um, So it was on release for JP. Actually, it was very interesting because it was supposed to be part of the launch, but due to server issues, they delayed it. But as soon as the event came live, they gave everyone a free copy of 2B, and then A2 and 9S were available through the gacha.
That's
For
crazy.
Yeah, it was really nice because they gave us thousands of gems for the gacha. They gave us 2B because they knew a lot of people would really want that
Oh
character.
yeah,
And they
absolutely.
they really went above and beyond making sure that people were happy with that. With Global, to my knowledge, that event is coming live, like with the game, it's coming out.
Yeah, I
Um,
believe that was what they announced.
yeah. There's also the Near Replicant. They're currently doing a rerun right now,
I
actually, in JP
know.
for that
I'm
banner.
so excited for like
So
Gestalt or Replicant. Is it? Yeah, Gestalt is Old Man and Replicant is Femboy, right?
That sounds right.
I think that's
But end
right.
of the day, there's definitely lots of collabs and crossovers with all the Yoko Taro universes. So if you like characters from those, you're definitely going to see them at some point or another.
Yeah, and since he works with Square, Square is very up on like self collabing. Like they've done it with like Full Metal Alchemist and stuff like that with like Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, and they're all about that. So we will
Yeah,
we will definitely see stuff. So
yeah.
the
If you're curious about what characters do come out, like if you're on the fence, the Sinoalice, I think it's Sinoalice.tw. There's a whole database there in
yeah,
English, and you can look at all the characters that have come out and stuff, and all the jobs for them. So yeah, if you're interested, like I wonder if this character comes out, you can check that. If it's in the JP version, very very good chance it's going to be in the global version. So.
yeah, because they're not like Gumi, where you'll get 6 months down the line and you'll get a global exclusive that just destroys the game, and you're like, okay, thanks guys, that was really fun. So the gist of the game is you are playing various fairy tale characters gone wild. For the most part, absolute waifu bait. You've got characters like Alice, Red Riding Hood, who has some crazy gear. You've got like Snow White, Princess Kaguya, Sleeping Beauty. You've got Hansel and Gretel, which I guess Gretel is the character and Hansel is the ghost that's in most of the gear, if I'm reading the gear
That sounds
right.
right. Yeah,
And then you've got
yeah.
Pinocchio, who is like, I don't know if it's a male or female Pinocchio, but it's a doll, so I guess it doesn't really matter in the long run anyway.
If you start listing all the characters, you're going to be here a while.
Yeah, and then, well, on launch, we get those, and Cinderella, I think, are the only other ones.
I
And
don't
then,
think Pinocchio is actually part of launch.
oh, no, okay. Because, like, I was looking into it,
No.
and I know he came out a little bit after, but I didn't know if he was going to be on
I think he
release.
came out about the same time as Mermaid did.
Oh, that makes sense. Yeah, because Mermaid was a little interesting. So
Mm.
essentially, with the exception of collabs, you are looking at all crossover or all fairy tale like Brothers Grimm style characters, and this is Yoko Taro's style and art. So there's a lot of detail in both their weapons and their costume designs. As you change jobs, which we can go over in a minute, or roles, quote unquote, I guess. Um, they each get a different look and a different outfit depending on what weapon or what job you have equipped. So, like, there's a lot of love that goes into these character looks, and some of them are really cool.
I gotta say, I'm a real fan of all the Snow White stuff. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, Snow White's outfits seem to be really good. I've only seen like a handful of Alice's that I really like,
I
and
will send you the entire folder of Snow White if you want.
I am sure I can find it. I was looking them up earlier, but yeah, I there's and this is one of those like, oh yeah, by the way, all of your waifus have giant weapons that look crazy. That's 100% this game. Like you are going to see like Fate Grand Order levels of that's a lot of belts and a lot of stabby things, and why is there a face on a sword?
Yeah.
Very bizarre. But it's
Yeah.
they're almost painstakingly crafted. Like you see a lot of the actual story in each of the characters, like weapons and outfits and everything. There's a lot of little ends to that, and the details are really fine. So it's really cool.
The details really stick out too in the art because of the live 2D that the game kind of totes all around.
Yeah,
You can
it's
see
you.
it's crisp.
Some of you might know what that means. For those of you that don't, it's kind of an almost 3D rendering of the models and the characters. So, like, when you see them in their art, you're like, okay, that's cool. But when you see them in the game, they're a little more depthy, and their actual models look kind of crazy.
I think the easiest way to put it, it's animated 2D. It's still a
Yeah.
2D image. It's just been given a layered effect so that it can move and look like an actual like thing and not just a static image on your screen.
Yeah, and some of the
And
characters it looks really smooth on, and others it looks kind of creepy, which I guess is a sort of a subtext for the game.
yeah, well, that's kind of the point of it.
Yeah, because so the story essentially, because they've only released a little bit on global and it's not out, and neither one of us reads Japanese, is that each of these story characters are attempting to resurrect their quote unquote author, whatever that means, and there's a lot of reference that for one author to come back, all of the other characters have to get killed. So essentially, it's supposed to turn into like this the last one standing gets to live their dream out, which is very Yoko Taro, and it's kind of on theme in like modern media with battle royales and all that stuff being massively popular. Even though the game mechanics may not necessarily represent that as well, I guess.
Yeah, I don't really have too much to add on that. Like I said, story was never really my thing with that game. Funny enough, even though I play a lot of mobile games, I don't really pay attention to the story in any of them. So I'm not the one to talk about for story,
I'm
but
trying to
your
think if there
synopsis sounds on
was.
the point.
I'm trying to think if there was anyone that I'm actually invested in because you don't really play mobile games for the story. It's like reading Playboy for the articles. You're not. That's not necessarily what you're there for.
Yeah. Well, the only mobile game that I think I have any comprehension of the story for, um actually, is there really any of them? I don't think so. Maybe that was the case a few years ago, but now not now I've just yeah, I think it's because I pick them up and drop them so often because I'll pick it up to try and it's really fun. And after a few months, I drop it. I've just kind of got used to not investing myself in them. I think Tales of the Rays was the last one I really read the story for. That was also just a really fun game, and I like Tales, so it's not
Yeah,
really
I was
fair.
gonna say if you're a Tales fan, Tales of Rays was very, very good. So like the story wasn't amazing, but it was Tales, and you have some of the coolest characters you're gonna run through there. Like, God, I remember when Tales of Fantasia came out, and you could finally get like the translated ROM. We didn't say that, Nintendo. Uh, we're making words up. None of these mean anything. But like, I played it when they finally translated it. And it's such, oh my god, it's still one of my favorite games of all time. Like it's up there with
Mhm.
like Chrono Trigger and Fantasy Star 4 for me. Like absolute masterpiece. So moving on to mechanics. So we'll go over the I guess we'll go over the gotcha thing first and kind of establish that, and then move into the mechanics. So you have one thing that you pull in this game, as far as I know, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. Is there something else that I missed, or is it just the weapons?
Oh yeah, you're completely wrong. There's nightmares.
Oh no, what are those?
So the easiest way to put it, like Spookus, you have weapons and you have nightmares. Nightmares are the summons of the game, and they give you buffs or special effects, or they
I
debuff
was
your
wondering
enemy.
what that slot was for. I never could fill it, and it never gave me anything to put in it. So, do they unlock at a different time, or do you just not get them until
Nope,
later?
those are gacha, and you can get some of them, if I remember correctly, through events and whatnot.
Oh, okay.
But primarily, you are rolling the gacha just for weapons, because that makes up the majority of the game. Weapons unlock characters or jobs, I should
Quote unquote, yeah.
specify. Yeah, and nightmares, well, they are what they are. Um, yeah, nightmares have a very low chance of appearing in a gacha when you roll. So it's that's kind of where the whole starting roll thing that I always promote comes in. Is when the game starts, if you're one of the people that has to reroll for like the best thing, aim for one of the launch nightmares because there's three of them that are in there, and they're still viable in JP even 3 years later. So that's a
Oh,
good sign to
Jesus.
show
What are
for
the,
it.
do you know what the 3 launches are?
Well, they're the only ones that are in the pool.
Yeah.
I can't remember the exact names, but one of them is for fire, one is for wind, and one is for water.
Oh, okay, so they're elemental based.
Yes, it's an elemental triangle based game. So it's interesting because I actually had somebody DM me the other day asking about how to min max in Sinoalice. When the game launches, what do I do to min max? and I had to let him down gently because there is no real way to min max in Sinoalice because, for one, you don't require, but if you're min maxing, you're going to have 3 weapon grids, one for fire, one for wind, one for water. And that comes with your nightmares, comes with your armors, the whole 9 yards. And it's a ton to fill out for a single thing.
Yeah, they're very expansive. They require a significant amount of resources per grid.
Yeah. Well, for example, your weapon grid, your main weapons, you can slot 20.
Yeah.
I believe it's 20. That sounds right. It's been a long time. But anyways, you slot, your 20 weapons, and then you have a subgrid where you slot another 20 weapons. And those subgrid, you take 10% of the total stats and slap it onto your main pool. Now, all of these weapons can be limit broken 4 times with duplicates. They can all have their skill levels increased by individual materials that you have to, farm up either playing the game or whatever.
Regular dupe mechanics for gacha.
Exactly. So when you think about it, it's a ton of investment just for a single weapon. And you need 20 of them to fill out your grid, 20 more to fill out your subgrid. But it doesn't end there. Because then you have nightmares. Those have their own limit breaks, their own skills and things you have to raise up. And then you have armors, which, again, same deal. So if you want to min-max in Sinoalice and, wonder what's the best thing to do and all that, frankly, I'm going to tell you, unless you have thousands of dollars to throw on this game every month, just play casually. Pick your favorite character, find that character you really like, whether it's a cute girl, hot guy, whatever, take your pick. And just play with what the game gives you. Because it is a very laid-back game. The only thing with the gacha, like I said, when you start, if you want to have the air quote best roll, one of the 3 summons and maybe a character job or 2. And there you go. That's kind of the ideal. You're going to find the biggest returns from the gacha system in this game come from getting character jobs. Because when you get a character job and you level up that job, you get passive bonuses to the character and to other jobs as well. So it feeds into itself, much more so than constantly trying to get the best weapons or the newest nightmares.
Yeah, you're not really power creeping yourself every time the new hotness drops in gacha. It's just like, oh, hey, it's another job. Cool.
Exactly. It'll add up if you miss 60, 70 jobs. It's not going to add up if you miss a handful of them. No.
Yeah. So the jobs there are 9 total, if I'm remembering correctly.
Straight, yes. There's actually no, I think it's only 8, 4 and 4.
Oh, that's right. So the roles are split between 2 things, and this is something that Xant, well, I'm sure will resounding cosign on. The way this gacha is played is not like other gachas. So you have 4 support classes jobs, and you have 4 DPS jobs. You aren't going to be able to play all 8 of them, at least in the beginning. You may be able to start balancing them out later on, but they are very costly to try to maintain more than 2 or 3 weapons.
Yeah, that is pretty true. And it's because they all require different weapons and just in general skills on the weapons and stuff, and it all feeds into each other. Because if you want to play a DPS role, you're going to need a very specific set of weapons. You're going to need jobs that are kind of built around that. If you want to play a support, a buffer, debuffer, again, you got to have the job that's fitted for that. You got to have the gear, and all that. So it's the one thing I'll recommend to everybody when they pick up this game to play it. Just don't sweat your rolls. Play the game. Have your fun. The only competitive aspect of this game is the Coliseum, and unless you're heavily investing into it and playing at the super high levels, you're not going to find yourself stonewalled by the difficulty because you're playing against other players. Almost everyone's going to be in the same boat, and it's 15 versus 15 if I remember correctly.
Yeah, because it's 9 supports, 9 and then you 6. Yeah, it's 9 and 6. So you have 9 sports and 6 DPSs. So the jobs are your specialized. Now, I'm going to say the word specialized weapon, and that sort of matters because they usually get more benefit from using that one, but not all jobs only have one weapon. Now, the other thing I want to tell you about jobs is that not every character has access to every job. You are literally on a number roll from 2 to 8. some characters like 2B, for example, only has 2 classes, if I remember correctly. She has Breaker and I think both of hers are DPS, aren't they?
Most collaboration characters and things that aren't part of the core universe only have a couple of jobs
Yeah.
available to them. But all the core characters, I think, as of now in JP, have access to at least one of every single job. Some characters will have 2 of the same, right? Like
Yeah.
I know Snow White has a few duplicates through her sets. So
Yeah, I think she has 2 Breakers, and whereas
yeah,
Cinderella has 2 Gunners, because she has a
yeah.
bow and she has a set of handguns. So each of these things are very different. So like the Breaker class is a DPS, single target damage. They use swords primarily. The Crusher is the hammer. They use multiple target physical damage. The Gunner is the bow or guns, which you'll see a lot of. Single target magic damage, and the Paladin uses pole arms, which are multiple target magic damage. Your support classes are the Book or Sorcerer, which is debuffs. The Minstrel, which is the instrument, which I think might be one of the better support classes, because the buffs in this game get kind of insane.
They can get insane, absolutely, but it does require a decent amount of investment into your weapons to get there. Because the way that the buffs and the debuffs work, somebody gave me this really nice infographic image for it. And I actually brought it up in one of the videos where I talked about Sinoalice. But with the buffs and debuffs, the easiest way to explain it is it works on a scale from -10 to +10, and it stacks. And each stack, it pretty much represents a not a flat, but a percentage value of how much a stat has been increased or decreased by. The amount of stacks you're able to add or remove based on whether you're buffing or debuffing a foe or an ally, whatever, is based purely off of the relevant stat that what your action is doing. So buffs, if I remember correctly, rely on your offensive magic, whereas debuffs work on defensive. I'd have to double check the numbers on that.
That sounds right.
Yeah, but end of the day, your flat stat values in comparison to who you're trying to land this buff on, if it's an enemy, needs to be really high for higher amounts of stacks to apply. And
so if you try to like take somebody's mag stat away, for example, if they don't have a lot of it, you're not going to remove very much.
yeah, it's also the higher the stacks get, the more difficult it is to apply or remove.
It's diminishing returns at that point. Yeah.
It's not so much diminishing returns as it's just harder to apply them, because the percentage value, like a 1 stack is like 5%, right? And 10 stacks is 50 or whatever. But once you get up to 7 stacks or so, it becomes increasingly difficult to add or subtract, right? If you're +7, very hard to add more. If you're -7, very hard to remove more. And as a buffer or debuffer class, your numbers will make or break whether or not you can bring your teammates out of debuff territory and into buff territory, or vice versa with the enemies. So
like it's a completely different sub combat within regular combat.
Yeah, it is. That's why most people, for new players or people that are going to be playing the game casually, heavily recommend playing healer, because it requires the lowest overall investment, because you only have to focus on a single stat value. DPS has to focus on all 4 very heavily. Well, I guess technically 3, because your primary offensive stat and then your defensive stats. But buffers and debuffers have to focus on everything, because all of their stats are brought into play when you're using buffs and debuffs. If you're just a buffer, it's different, or just debuffer, but typically you run both.
Yeah, and going into healing, so the staff users are clerics. They primarily heal. And I do want to point out that support doesn't mean you don't have damaging moves. You can still attack, but the majority of your time, if you are trying to play your role, quote unquote, like think of it like raiding in an MMO. Like you have a job. You are supposed to do a thing. So you want to do your thing most efficiently as possible. So it's a very different approach to a gacha. And it doesn't... I don't necessarily think it's as bad in the story modes and like the collaboration events, but you can pretty much, none of this specifically applies to story mode. So if you're just playing it casually, like, just enjoy the game. Like, you're not really going to have
Mhm.
that big of a deal. But when it
The
comes to PvP and competition, yes.
Yes, and that's it. And also because of the way that the game works, where you can create multiple parties and kit them out and all that, you can just create like a team for Colo and then like the Coliseum, and then a team for story and events and stuff. And that way you can just select it and off you go, and you can go maul things. But like you said, in general, the content is clearable because it's not just you that goes into combat. When you start a fight, like any mission in story mode, you get a bunch of random other players with you. So friends and other users. So even though you're running a healer, there's a very, very good chance you're going to be paired up with at least 2 DPS.
I
So
will
you can just sit there
say,
and keep everyone alive.
when I was playing the JP version to get kind of acclimated with it, and they're going through their anniversary right now, and I opened a pretty good healer set, so I was like, okay, well, I'll try healing. I'm like, oh, this is fun. And then one of the story missions, I had 4 healers and a breaker, and I was like, well, we won't die.
Yeah, that's the one thing. I haven't noticed the enemies heal themselves.
Yeah,
So
like, as long as and
attrition.
some, yeah, attrition is really the name of the game for story, and some missions are timed, but they're far and few between, and they are usually not as hard as others. So leveling up jobs have global stats, damage bonuses, character area bonuses, all sorts of stuff. So these are
Yes.
this is your bread and butter. These are your gotchas. This is what you are unlocking every time you roll on the gotcha. And there aren't separate gotchas for nightmares, correct?
Sometimes there are gachas where nightmares are specifically on rate up, but to my knowledge, nightmares are always integrated with weapon banners, and
Okay.
there's like a kind of a standard pool of nightmares you can kind of draw from whenever you're rolling. The it's interesting when I look at the game because it's there's so many different types of gachas that Sinoalice pulls out and throws at you, and you kind of have to understand what they are because you have your basic new character release gachas, right? And these are where you have the best chance to get your hands on that new job, right? Then you have the nightmare raid ups, right? Pretty self-explanatory. Then you have the spec weapon gachas, and these are what you roll on if you're going to be a real sweaty tryhard in Coliseum because these weapons are meta defining. And the problem is they're limited time, so they'll show up for a few days and then they're gone for like a week or two, right? And then the next time it comes in, I'll have different stuff in it. So the meta is constantly changing because the spec weapon gachas keep kind of power creeping themselves. But again, that's only something to worry about if you're really tryharding in Colo. And right now, if you download the JP client, I know you said you recently did. I don't know if you still have it or not, but if you opened it right now and went to the gacha screen, there's like 7 different gachas to
Oh
pull
yeah,
from.
no, that was so like one. I have no idea what's going on. So I go into this thing and I'm like, oh, hey, I got a bunch of tickets. Oh, hey, I got a bunch of resources. And I open up the summon screen. I'm like, what the hell am I supposed to do? There are like 9 different gotchas going on right now.
Yeah, they love dropping all these bits. Even at launch, like when the game came out, we had the standard you can always pull on this gacha. And then after a couple of weeks, we then had the Snow White Crusher banner come up, and it was pretty tame at launch. But it only took a few months, and the next thing you know, whenever you go to the gacha screen, you easily have like a full page of gachas to choose from. And if you don't speak Japanese or you're not constantly following along, right, you got lost really quickly, and yeah, that was it. Like right now in JP, I just opened it up to. So we have the Nier Replicant rerun. We have the 3rd anniversary banner. We have the double S guaranteed banner here. Yeah. What else do we have? There's the 3rd anniversary selection for Snow White, 3rd anniversary collection for Kaguya. Then you have the it's almost like a rerun banner where you have access to older character jobs and stuff like that. And it's just the list goes on. And there's also a second tab that has more gadgets to pull
Yeah,
from.
the second tab is almost all of the ticket banners, by the way. I found that
Yeah,
out.
it's absolutely crazy
Now,
how many
being fair,
different
this is
banners.
their 4th anniversary, I
Third.
believe. 3rd. So like when I loaded up, the little creepy dolls got a facelift and they got a completely different outfit, and they were like, "Good luck, fucko! Here's a bunch of Japanese." And I'm like, "Damn it! Why did I have to download the game when I don't know what's going on and I'm so deep? Hey guys, it's Spoot. So this video ended up being significantly longer than I was expecting, so I've split it into two, and we're linking the second half of our talk on the next one. So thanks for listening.